Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Corbett, and with me, of course, is Mr. Matt Germain, and we're going to take a look at what's going on in that special world of the Tampa Bay Rays. Oh, my gosh. Hey, Matt, if you've been looking at this, I mean, this is not what I expected to see after a quarter of a season gone, brother.
Yeah, it's been lackluster, I guess is what you would say overall. They're overcoming a lot of hurdles and some of them they're not clearing completely.
Well, I think that's accurate enough. And we know injuries have played a part of it. And I got to tell you, I've always been of the mindset when I hear other teams say, well, our guys are injured. I say, go tell it to somebody else. But I'm no sympathy.
Yeah.
But with you and I've said time and again, with basically a full rotation of pitchers that are on the sideline, that it's been difficult. But I think we've seen some like this past week from some of that pitching. I mean, I saw Civale the other day, and I thought he did a decent job.
Yeah, Civale did. I still think his pitch mix is off, but he was a lot sharper than he had been, and I think he knows that his job is basically, to go out there and shove as much as he can so he can chew up as many innings as possible. Um, and the stuff is there. He's just, to me, he needs to locate better when he misses. If he does that, then he's not going to get hurt as much when he does.
Well, like I said, I thought he was looking better. I'm looking forward to watching Taj tonight, and I've got TV on the other room. I haven't looked at what's going on. Can you see the screen from where you're at? What's the score right now?
Yep, it's 1-0 for the Red Sox. With a sacrifice fly. Taj looks great though. I love the way the ball is coming out of his hands so far since he's come back, even in AAA. And I think he's going to be a game changer. And when Pepio and him are going strong, I'm hoping they can get a good stretch of both of them healthy at the same time. And I think that's when the Rays start picking up steam. So really excited with this start today. So hopefully he settles down after that one run, because the Rays aren't going to score many off of Tanner Houck, I don't think.
Yeah, he's a tough one. And with Taj, I remember early on him talking of the mindset is he pitched each ball. By that, I mean, he didn't look backward. He didn't look forward. He just was like, okay, whatever that just pitched, it was fantastic. It was great. If it wasn't, then that's fine too. I've got to make this next pitch, be a strike. I got to make sure that it's effective. And he didn't seem the kind of person who would sit inside of his head over a bad pitch.
Right. That's one big difference between him and Blake Snell. And the other one is that I think he has a complete awareness that he can throw his stuff in the strike zone without having to worry about it. Whereas Blake Snell almost completely needs to convince himself to throw strikes on occasion. So
Yeah.
two different styles, and I love the potential. I really see Taj Bradley eventually as being an ace on the staff. I know last year he frustrated some fans with some of the down starts that he had, but I think him and Ryan Pepio are really exciting front runner guys.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. And we've been fortunate. I mean, last week we were talking about Johnny DeLuca, and certainly with Mr. J-Lo coming back and seeing what Josh could do. Yeah, my goodness. We had some energy going out there. Randy Arozarena seems to be waking up.
Yeah, yeah, he's looking good. The bat speed's back, which I love to see because it wasn't there in April at all. I don't know what technical thing he's changed. Remember re, recently Harold Ramirez was being interviewed and he said that he dropped his hands and held them closer to his body and just to be able to get the bat out there quicker. I don't know exactly what technical things went along with that in terms of timing, but it almost seems like Randy Arozarena is doing that. So he's catching the ball ahead compared to what he was doing earlier in the year, which was really being late on most pitches.
Well, I'm glad to see, like I said, Randy coming back. Series seems to be still iffy. I mean, he had a home run the other day, and I don't know. Do you think he's going to be getting back to his regular self here soon?
It's hard to say. The talent's there. Everybody sees the talent. So that's the frustrating part is, If he was more of a contact oriented guy, he could hit home runs at a decent rate still, and be a really like almost maybe a four tool outfielder, right? In center field with plus power. So he'd be a really valuable component. But at this point, just watching the Red Sox series, and we see their shortstop slash center fielder, Rafaela, I think there's a chance that Jose Caballero ends up doing the same kind of thing at some point where he plays some shortstop and possibly center field. And I'd be curious to see if Caballero can, split time with Johnny DeLuca just because they both have better, more, I shouldn't say better. They have more consistent at bats, through months. And I think that's the first frustrating part with Jose Siri is he tends to have long stretches where they're not really productive at bats, and then he'll have a few really good at bats, and that'll drive managers nuts over time too. So it's hard to say. I wouldn't bet either way. I wouldn't bet for or against them.
Well, I'm looking forward. Like I say, I hope to see Siri coming back strong. I mean, I know we still have plenty of guys in the IL. And no, you showed some more information on Mr. Brendan McKay the other day, and I thought, I can't believe that the Rays. I mean, I wish him well. I very much so because I know the man's trying, but the body just sometimes won't let you do what you need to do.
Don't
And
understand the focus with the starting pitching comeback. I don't know if it would have been any different if it was in relief. I think it might. I've heard differing things from experts on how hard it is to be a relief because you have to have, do things more consistently. You don't get as much rest time period. So it's a little bit of a different tempo. But I would do wish I'm like you. I wish him the best too, because he's worked his tail off to try to get back to this point. So when that 60-day IL news came out, I was crushed for him.
yeah, I don't know what to help. I mean, what's going to happen for that poor fella, But let's kind of scoot back here and look at last night's game. I thought we were going to be able to win that one, brother. I mean, it's looking good.
Yeah,
And
and I know some people like to point at the Manuel Rodriguez play as the reason, but it's more than that. Honestly, Mark, like there was opportunities for them to win the game before that, and they just didn't capitalize. They had a runner on third with one out. They never drove in. They had guys getting caught stealing bases when they had no business trying to steal a base. It wasn't even their fastest guys doing it. So there was a lot of ingredients in that game that were frustrating for me, but generally, like when you look at the game, you look at standing back from it, you're like, yeah, it was a competitive game and they could have won it. So it's hard to get. I don't mind losing those games. The ones that I hate losing are the ones where they do weird things with the personnel that they use near the end of the game, and then they drive themselves away from the possibility of a win. Those to me are the more frustrating ones. So last night it was fun to get some extra innings, but frustrating that we definitely didn't come out on top, but still entertaining.
let's see. I was curious because you mentioned stolen bases, and sometimes it looks just plain sloppy, or you really have no business doing that. If we're looking at teams, I looked the other day. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but the team that had the most stolen bases I saw the other day was the Reds,
Mhm.
and they still got some work to do. So stolen bases they're great entertainment, but they don't necessarily equate to wins, and it's got to be smart, when you're doing. And I don't
Right.
know.
And that's why I like it's it's called base running runs above average from Fangraphs. It'll tell you how well a team is running the bases. So whether or not they're doing things intelligently or not, because it'll kind of include more information than just simply stolen bases. And it'll take, how often do you take first to third? How often do you do this, do that, yada, yada, yada. And how many opportunities did you miss? And overall, the Rays are about midway point in the league, generally, right? So they're always somewhere between the 15th and 18th position in the rankings in that stat. And a lot of it is because of that, because they take chances at the least opportune times and end up taking the bat out of the hands of the guy that's at the plate. And that's the frustrating part. Is sometimes I think, they by doing that, you're lowering the pitch count of the pitcher that's on the mound. And so you're, especially when you're doing it against a starter, and like Ahmed Rosario last night was a good example. He had no business. It was no outs. He was on first base. You don't need to push the envelope. You're not a base stealer to begin with. It's not like he has plus speed. So just wait for your opportunities and wear down the pitcher so that you can get to the pen earlier. Right. To me, that's more important than trying to steal that one base in certain places, especially in tight games, especially when you know that the guy behind the plate has a really good arm and can use it really well. If it was a weak catcher, like when we were playing the Mets, yeah, I get it. Their running stopping game is terrible. It doesn't. So go ahead, run wild, do what you need to do. But in tight games with a really strong catcher behind the plate, I think they did it against the Brewers as well. They were running on Contreras like crazy. I was like, "Yeah, what are you doing?" Like, and they got caught and they got caught, and it was just getting frustrating. Some guys can have the green light all the time. Jose Caballero, steal whenever you want. Jose Siri, yeah, his jumps are not really great. So I still would give him the what I would call the yellow light, right? Where, yeah, just check with us and we'll either okay it or not, sort of thing. But the whole theory with the Rays giving everybody the green light, I think that's a problem. I think that needs to change. And it you can't. First of all, it takes that control out of Kevin Cash and the Race's hands, and it jeopardizes the run production and the control over the game and the flow of the game, which is his job, to be quite honest, is to manage the flow of the game. So I think it's a mistake because you see it too often that guys run in the worst position possible spots. Randy's been culpable of doing that on occasion. So hopefully somebody whispers something in somebody's ear and kind of clamps down on it a little bit, just so they're a little bit smarter about it.
Yeah, that's the Mr. 10 years manager.
Hmm.
It's things where he needs to be doing. I mean, that's one of the ones it seems like that's actually your call, Kevin. You get to
Right.
tell him, come
Yeah.
on, man. Madness. But all in all, I've been enjoying the game. I'm enjoying the team. We're right underneath 500. And we've got some work for us. I know you and I were talking about the AL East because that's a lot of what's been going on with us last week and next week to boot. See, we finished up with the Yankees. We're working with the Red Sox. We got the Blue Jays, and we got the Red Sox again. It's going
Mhm.
to be fun times here for the next week or so. So I don't think. What do you think when we finally face up at the Blue Jays? Do you think that's going to be a easier path than what we have right now with the Red Sox and finishing up with the Yankees?
The pitching matchups aren't ideal, to be quite honest, because you got Alexander starting it and Civale finishing it, and I know both of them might end up struggling against the Jays lineup. Doesn't scare anybody away, but the aggressiveness of the Rays in pitching to the guys that they probably shouldn't be pitching to in certain moments tells me they're going to challenge them, and so yeah, the basically they're going to be dependent on the lineup to perform. And right now, tonight, they have the optimal kind of setting where they've got right, left, right, left, right, left, all the way down. And I love that kind of tempo, especially against the righty. So they finally have put in all of their left-handed hitters, including Johnny Aranda, which, I feel really bad for Austin Shenton. I think he would have performed a heck of a lot better than a lot of people that ended up taking um, his what should have been his at bats in the lineup over the month of April. But I don't feel completely bad for him. Do you know why, Mark?
Because he's not ripe enough yet.
No, because he made 200 grand to sit on the bench,
Oh, good point.
which is probably more than he's ever made in the minors or signed for, right? So he made good money to kind of learn his craft. Hopefully that helps him to really light up AAA and find his role with another team. I don't think the Rays are serious about giving him a shot. How can I be? Like they didn't give him any at bats, and when they did, it was in the most high pressured situations,
Yeah.
and he still performed well. But I don't think he was treated fairly at all. and I'll stick to that.
Well, and we talked about it when he came up because he was just getting ready to put money down on an apartment in Durham. And we're saying, yeah, I think he could probably afford it now,
Mhm.
but afford both of them. But yeah, so yeah, he's got that in the pocket. I hope, you hope something like this doesn't cripple the ability to be marketable, if you will, for the future. I don't think it will. I really don't.
No. If anything, it'll promote him because he did it all with there was no I don't think um uh, frustration from his part that came across
Yeah.
anywhere. And like I said, his at bats were stellar, despite getting only 43 of them over the course of a quarter season, which is ridiculous. I think he was on pace for 172 at bats over the course of a full season at the pace he's going. So not only were the Rays purposely short changing themselves in a lineup that could have been more optimal, but they obviously didn't trust any other assets more than they trusted Austin, or didn't want. It's just weird. There's a lack of faith in the Rays roster in the way they're operating right now. It's not like anything I've ever seen the last 5 years, and it's kind of throwing me off a little bit, to be honest.
Well, as far as throwing things off, I don't know whether to go ahead and transition down to the Rays coming back because you got to have a home to come back to, man.
You
And,
do.
and there's been a lot of question marks about where the Rays are been. I did a little bit of history scholarship, if you will, digging in and saying, okay, I wanted to find out what's been the path with the Rays in the Trop, and what's the future hold, or what was outlined where we thought was going to be the future. I mean, you look at them. Let's see, man. You look at the Trop, and they got that put together in the hopes of having a baseball team. Initially the Trop was used by the Thunder. It was the Thunderdome. It
Mm.
was used for arena football. All that time while trying to get MLB to give an extension team to Tampa. When we finally got one, and then if you're looking at the people around it. Let's see. Stu came in, I think just around 20 years ago. I think it was May, it may have been May 2004, where he came in and got like a 45% uh, part of the business, if you will, the Rays.
Mhm.
So, at that point, you're saying it's his now. It's his to go ahead and do some things formative. I guess, let's see. Then about 7 years later, we're looking 2007 and what? Oh, geez, trying to figure this out. You know what happened in 2007? They were looking at putting another stadium together, and it wasn't more than a couple miles away. They were looking at the St. Pete waterfront down there, I guess where Al Lang Stadium is, and that was going to be the new stadium. What's interesting about that, Matt, is it had the support of the governor of Florida to help find funds for it.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have that today. But
No.
no. But within a couple of years, I think they even had the same company, Heinz, they were working with then. But uh, they said, nope, it's not going to work. Wasn't going to happen. And then you wait a few more years, and they start talking about Ybor over here on the Tampa side of the water.
Mhm.
I was excited about that. I don't know about you. Do you remember that big giant glass roof they were going to have?
I thought it was awesome. That it had a statement. It would have had a personality that kind of drew people to it. It would have been a must go visit, right? If it came to fruition.
Yeah, it really would have. I don't think there was room around there to develop a whole neighborhood or business. Well, there could have been, I suppose, but there's so much historic around Ybor and how much that baseball actually grew out of that area. A lot of what the immigrants who came over here and working in the tobacco factories.
Mhm.
But yeah, it would have been neat to have that there. I was saddened when it didn't happen, but that's where it goes. And then what's the next thing we see? We're looking at the next solution is to split the team, half of a
Mhm.
year here and half of a year in Montreal. I don't know. I couldn't stand that idea. I mean, either I have a team or I don't.
I think honestly, like I covered that entire time very closely. And I think it was a test by Major League Baseball. It wasn't actually meant to go through in that case. It was a test for two reasons. Number one, I don't think Montreal ownership group that was talking to Stu about this believes that they can afford a team on their own. I think the price tag is too high for them. It's unpalatable. So they were looking at different options and they needed to test that idea out to see, first of all, how well the Montreal group would be vetted. And so they did that, and how much the political system in Quebec would actually support the Montreal group. And they saw that. So they were willing to pony up all the money that they needed and all the help that they were asking for with no questions asked. So now they know what they need to know about the Montreal group. And I still believe when expansion comes around, that sister city concept may come back into the fold as options so that it can include more cities. So if you're looking to expand to 32 cities, why not 33? They're starting with nothing. Then it's a completely different scenario than what the Rays were dealing with, which is essentially losing a half a season, or a half of a half, so a quarter season of games to another city. Whereas for the other group coming in, if it's for an expansion team, like let's say it's Nashville and Montreal that split a team, then you could have 41 games in one city and 40 games in the other, and then deal with whatever you need to deal with playoff wise. So I think that's what that was about, because it made no sense to try to get fans to continue supporting a team when they're playing in a different province or different area, region altogether, half the year.
It would be much more difficult for a team that already has a team, like you said, instead of somebody who doesn't have one at all for that solution. And the Bronfmans, I thought they might find the money up there to have another Montreal Expos, but I guess not. And MLB may not have been ready for it either, as you were pointing out. So testing the waters.
Mm-hmm.
But then we said, okay, after a bit of time in 2018, one of the things I was looking at, I know, was an article by John Romano with the Tampa Bay Times. And if I read nothing else of it, the headline kind of set it off. The first thing the Rays need to build is consensus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been the most difficult part for the Rays all through this journey for a new stadium. And it certainly was in Tampa. It doesn't seem like it's been as difficult a path in St. Pete, but this isn't something you just decide on and turn it around in 6 months.
Right. And I think the way that I read it all is, okay, Stu was basically stuck into the lease of the Trop. He had that entire length of time to try A, B, C, D, E, all the way through to Z, all the different scenarios, and try to see what worked and what didn't. So he had time. He didn't have any rush or any reason to rush the process, because he couldn't get out of the lease anyway. Nobody was going to let him out.
Yeah.
So he tested some things, and I think that more than anything aggravated a lot of fans, a lot of politicians, and so there was sometimes a slow, non-aggressive, completely off-standish style, which I think ended up biting him in Ybor. And then there was the result of that, which was trying to aggressively, chase the same dream. And then that didn't work. So then it shifted all the way back to St. Petersburg. But I think I wouldn't read too much into everything that's played out until now. Now is more of a consistent, okay, we want to praise the area. We're not putting up banners about sister city stuff. We're not, we're focusing solely on St. Petersburg because everybody else has told us that we're not, they're not going to play the game, right? In terms of helping out with financing and other things that they need help with.
And that's very accurate. I got to say that I probably have more sympathy for the ownership of the Rays than I ever thought I ever would after digging in deeper on all the hoops they've gone through. Whether I agreed with some of the things or not, I felt like the effort's been made there. I know you and I were bantering back and forth on Twitter the other day, and one of the things I was talking about is like, yeah, you need a project manager for this.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody who can bring all the pieces together. And I started looking at it, Matt, and I thought, my gosh, There's just so many pieces. I mean, the scope and size of this project, when you figure there's actually two elements to this whole piece over in St. Pete. I mean, there's the stadium and then there's the economic development, which is going to have housing, a museum, and other facilities as well. But and I cannot even begin to imagine putting that together and looking at the resources. I went back and I found an interview with Brian Auld on the day that they were pretty much endorsing the whole idea, and there had been an agreement with St. Pete about having the Rays there. It was back January 30th, 2023. And it was interesting because I felt so many times I listen to these front office guys and I feel like they say things they should. And I felt like, oh yeah, all in all, in that instance, I thought that man did a pretty good job. I'm going to play a bit here from that particular event. And let's see, it was actually a lady by the name of Colleen Wright with the Tampa Bay Times asking this question. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now.
Colleen Wright with the Tampa Bay Times. Today, Mayor Ken Welch in his Q&A session after his decision said that the Rays and the city of St. Petersburg are now engaged. So does this mean that the Rays are committed to staying and playing in St. Petersburg past 2027 and that you will cut off discussions with Tampa and Hillsborough? Or do the Rays intend on continuing due diligence on a possible Ybor City stadium?
Well, we are fully engaged with St. Petersburg, and we intend to work aggressively going forward to meet all expectations the city has in terms of timeline and hurdles along the way. But as we talked about, we are at the very beginning here, and there's a lot that still needs to go right for us to get a shovel in the ground. Up until that shovel is in the ground, it's important that we continue to have dialogue about preserving the Rays in Tampa Bay for generations to come and all the different ways that could happen. But I don't want to underestimate what a big step was taken forward today in St. Petersburg and Pinellas County.
So still looking in Tampa?
We're continuing the dialogue.
So, Matt, she was very candid in her questions to Brian, and I felt like he was pretty direct. And then when she did her follow-up saying, basically, are you done with Tampa? Have you closed that door? And he said no. He didn't say it quite that bluntly, but things aren't completed yet. And to me, that's good business strategy. As a fan, you're just like sitting there, oh my gosh, I thought we were good. I thought we had someplace in St. Pete. Are you saying you're still open to something in Tampa?
So there's always the possibility that certain demands or certain things, parameters will change in the deal that makes St. Petersburg unpalatable at some point. So you always have to keep that other door open for sure. That's closing doors is never going to help any business person or team.
No, and going back to the project management model for a moment, when you have to pull all this together, and it's like I said, almost two projects going on, and you have to look at the resources that you have and the resources that you're dependent upon for other stakeholders, if you will, whether it be the Heinz Group who's working with the Rays, whether it's the county officials in Pinellas, the board people for St. Pete, the council. There's just so many different people who have to bring something, even if it's just a yes vote to the whole thing. And I shudder to think the people who were working with us daily, it must have been like an ice Jenga, where the pieces could melt immediately as soon as you put them up there and touch them. But I thought they did pretty well.
I think that overall, the writers and the people who have been monitoring this whole process the whole time have been pretty fair with the Rays. I think some of them might have a vendetta in some cases. They're very few though. Overall, I think most of the articles that you're pointing to and most of the questions being asked are fair and they're very pertinent to what the Rays are doing. So overall, I think the coverage for this has been really strong.
The coverage definitely has, and it's timely too, because as we were talking about, there's two different elements for the disagreement. One of them being the economic development, and the other being the stadium. The council really hasn't had a full viewing of this until they had a workshop last week where they sat down and everybody went over everything for like 8 hours. I don't know if they gave them bathroom breaks or not, but they stayed in there and they were going to answer all the questions they could. And some of the questions were rather poignant too. They was like, okay, now if the owner of the Rays decides to leave before the 30-year contract, what obligations will that previous owner have to this agreement, what financials, et cetera, things of that nature. Then there was also, you and I were talking before the show, some questions about what measures or penalties would there be if we're looking at affordable housing that is part of that economic development. If there is not a certain amount available, what happens to the owners of the Rays at that point? Because that is part of the agreement. There's parts of the agreement saying who gets to decide where that affordable housing is located. So there's still questions that need to be answered, and feel like they're all moving in the right direction. Everything I'm seeing, there's these 8 council people. There's 2 of them right now that seem, one of them is definitely solidly against it, probably 2. So they need 5 council votes. And it's looking like they're going to get them, Matt.
Yeah, I'm hoping they do, because there's a lot of, you can look at this project, this whole entire thing, in a lot of different ways. But the way that I feel about it is St. Petersburg is looking for an identity upgrade, basically, where they're looking to really amp up their situation overall. And they have a willing business partner, in this case, in the Rays, who happen to have a stake in the development as well. If this were to fall through, let's say it does for whatever reason, and Stu sells the team to a Nashville interest, and the Nashville interest takes the Rays. Okay. Now Stu still owns part of the development rights in the area. What do you do? Who's going to invest upwards of 500, 500 million to 600, 700 million, depending on how you want to read it, into that area? And what are you going to put there that's going to be a significant draw or a significant, center portion to your city? So I think a lot of people, a lot of times, will sit back and say, well, we should be doing this with the money. Yeah, but then you're out of money, and what's bringing more money in? So unless there's a better opportunity, unless there's another investor saying, if you don't do the Rays, we're going to do this, and this,
right,
then you're really only looking at the Rays. They are your one opportunity, especially with Stu holding part of the cards in that front. So he sort of has their feet to the fire a little bit, and he's been able to live a little bit more dangerously because of that. So I think it's an interesting situation overall. I really do. But I think, like you say, unless something really significant happens where there begins to be a battle for one thing or the other, there's nothing in this proposal or disagreement that seems to me to point to anything of disinterest. And I will say that you had like the first version and the second version in the document that you sent me earlier today, of what the numbers look like. And it looks to me like the Rays have taken on a little bit more of the financial hit than was in the original offer. So there was like the cost overruns in certain cases would be on their books. There was an additional $53 million, I think, that was added to a certain part of the development so that they would be covering it instead of it coming from the city, which I think lowered the city's portion by 20 million, down from 150 million down to 130 million. So anyways, there's some financial aspects that have shifted around to the point where the Rays are taking a little bit more weight than they were in the original proposal. And I think anytime they do that, it does help their cause in being seen as an honest broker in the deal, sort of thing.
Well, instead of just trying to steamroll over the community. And
Right.
yes, exactly. If you see somebody willing to pony up a little bit more to be participating with it, yeah, I think it does give them more a favorable appearance and makes the whole deal more palatable as well. A politician can go back to their constituents and say, hey, guess what? We got the Rays to give us this much more. So, and we're going to be able to do this much more with the money. So those sort of things are encouraging. Let's see. The other part I was talking about they've had the workshop now on the gas plant on economic development. And so we were talking about the other project, and that's having the workshop on the stadium. And Matt, what I've read thus far is they still have like about 11 documents that still need to be signed on particulars. Yeah. Uh, that workshop is going to take place on June the 13th. And what this is interesting because they are going to close the workshop at 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. They're going to have their first reading about what's going to happen with it. Then on July 2nd is when they anticipate having a second reading, and that possibly will have the earliest vote together would be in mid-July, deciding on both of these programs and getting it done.
So if you were building a house and you needed to hire contractors today, right? Let's say that you wanted to build a house in July. Could you get contractors set for July?
Oh, that's the thing.
It's a thin line that they're running is all I'm going to say. Like if you're looking at mid-July, you're trying to get this locked up and all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. There must be some sort of another level that it needs to go through state-wise, would it? In terms of like I don't know what kinds of approvals they would need to kind of chime in on.
I don't think state, but there is county. There is the Pinellas County. And as of the moment, some of the things I've seen have been positive from the Pinellas County commissioners. So I don't think so necessarily with the state. Here's a thought. Now, all of this that's been going on since 2007, the Rays have been working with Hines, which is the company who's doing a lot for the development of this whole neighborhood and the stadium. You know, they've worked with them since 2007 on building some of the projects they were going to do. They've worked with a company with Populous, who's also helping in looking at some of those pieces together. We're looking at companies who've been part of this initiative for a decade or two. And I would like to think that they have the means, the wherewithal, and the connections to be able to snap the fingers and start being able to bring everybody in to make this happen. Now, maybe I'm just living in Disneyland, but I think it's possible. And I'll give you an example, and it's not valid, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. When I drive home at night, there's been rough roads on I-4 for a while. Well, they suddenly started to fix them. And I would come out and I would see all these giant machines on the side of the road, and they would come out and they would strip out the entire road and put down a new one practically overnight, like a mile at a time. And it was like, I didn't know that was possible. Well, I'm hoping that same kind of construction can translate into something they can pull together, you know, both on paper and in construction when it comes to this Rays Stadium that I know they'd like to have by 2027.
Right. So you would hope that Hines would have the connections because when you think about it, you're building a stadium, the first thing you do is dig a hole, right? So a lot of the groundwork and I know there's a lot of environmental concerns. I think that is the hurdle that I'm more concerned about is I know a lot of big developments like that. They have a lot of watershed and different things that they need to do for the water runoff and all the environmental concerns that go along with that that need to get sorted out. And sometimes they can be lengthy. There can be challenges to it. So I don't know what kind of powers they have in Florida itself, but it has been, an issue that needs longer attention in some cases. So hopefully Hines has all that sorted out and kind of planned ahead, but you wouldn't want it to delay much because right now if you're looking at November, possibly getting shovels in the ground, that's November 2024, and you're looking at 3 years. So by November 2027, right, you'd be at the 3-year mark.
Yeah.
And they'd be kind of wanting to get access to the stadium by February at a minimum. So yeah, it doesn't leave much room for error is what I'm saying.
Maybe we can play in Sacramento for a year. I don't know.
Or in Montreal.
Or Montreal, better yet. I will say one more thing about the environment, though. I did see something from the Sierra Club, and while they had some criticism, it wasn't damning. it was more like, here's some things we think maybe you ought to consider and some changes that should be made. It wasn't like, oh, this is going to impact everything and you need to stop immediately and this cannot be built.
Right.
It was more instructional and I won't say sympathetic. That's the wrong word, but maybe try to work together, coordinate with them. So we'll see. That being said, my friend, there are 8 councilmen on the St. Pete board, and I'm going to suggest all of you reach out to yours over there. And then, heck, you know what? Even if they're not a representative of yours, I'm going to go ahead and I'll list it on baseballbizondeck.com, and I'll also put it on Twitter. And Matt, if you wish to, you can share it as well. Those council members, and I'm not going to do anything for harassment. I'll give what their email is for their government email so you can respond to them and such. But give them your endorsement of why you think the Rays should have a stadium. And if there's questions they want to ask you back, great, let them. There's a couple of folks on there that had some valuable questions I should say valid questions, and we'll see what comes back. But I'm hoping by November that there is a shovel in the ground.
Yeah. I was interested in the document you sent me. Like they had 4.6% interest as on parts of the loans. They had bonds that they were, using to finance parts of this. And I started looking at, okay, if you have 81 home games in a year, how much are you looking to bring in for it to even out, to break even, basically? And it ended up being around $350,000 that you're looking to bring in for each game. So when you look at the fans, like let's say they get about 60 or 2/3 full stadium. So let's say 20,000 a game on average.
Okay.
Then you're looking at, okay, well, how much is that worth to me as a city? Like all the hotels, the foods, the cabs, and now all the workers that work at the stadium, all the workers that did construction at the stadium. Yeah, how much is all that economic benefit worth to me for each game? And that's a really hard thing to tell. And I don't know, like I'm still looking at it, I guess, in a little bit of a selfish position where if I was a city like in this position, I would still be asking for at least a portion of the naming rights so that it lowers that economic necessity that I need to cover my payments each year, which I think when they noted it was about 22 what was it, 22 million on average per year on the debt. And then it was 29 million was the max. So you're looking at, if you can cover, the more you can cover of that with money coming in, the better off you are. And the less, likely you are to run into issues. And when I look at Atlanta, what they're saying their economic benefit is for their stadium is about $11 million a year. So you're really looking to fill that other 17 million with things that you can't really account for, right? Or in this case, maybe 11 million if you're looking on the average. So that's why I say if they were able to get, let's say, a stadium naming rights deal that was 18 million or 15 million a year, depending on how inflation's working for stadium naming rights now. I have no idea how that's working. But if you were able to get that and then you say, okay, well, we'll take 60% and you get 40%, like in terms of the city gets 60% of that, it would actually, to me, it would make all of the people that are getting upset about the money that coming from the public to fund this, it would kind of calm some of their fears down because they would be getting that money directly to pay for programs that money may have otherwise be used for. So I still feel like that should be part of it. Now I know everybody's going to say, okay, well, Stu's a billionaire. Well, he's not. He's actually worth $800 million. He's not a billionaire. And that's one of the major reasons why he needs a strong partnership with the city in order to get this deal done, because he doesn't have the liquid assets or money to do it on his own. So yeah, it's a weird situation, but I still feel like the naming rights is the one avenue I think that could appeal to a lot of fans that are still weighing it, like you're saying, like in terms of wanting to support it or not. And council members, I have no idea if that's weighing on them at all, or if they're just willing to accept it as it is right now.
Well, there's some, they're going to ask for something. I did see some who were talking about the naming rights and getting a piece of that action. And I think it's great. Go ahead. There should still be some dialogue, but a decision does have to be made. I got to tell you, Karen and I have been traveling a little bit this year, and we'd like to get a hotel near the ballpark. Right now, just for grins and giggles while we're talking, I looked here, seeing, okay, what would it be? Let's see, a Hilton at the Battery, Atlanta. I get up there around, it's like June 14th, June 15th. I think the Rays are playing around then, in $571 a night. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see, Priceline has some for 635. And I was seeing some the other day for like practically 1,000. So, there's money that can go back into a community.
What kind
And
of houses are you looking at, Mark? What is it included in here? You getting massages?
it was
Getting meals? What's
you would hope, would you? Geez, my knees, dude. Let's see. That's a double tree suites. That's nothing fancy. Oh, what's this one? 1,131. That's the Omni Hotel at the Battery. And what am I going to get there? Let's take a look. Oh, well, I guess so. It's only it's a 4-star hotel with 4.5 stars. And yeah, that's just insane. I don't care what some of these places we go to like have a great view of the park, and this one does too. That's one of the things we pay for when we do spend a little bit more money here or there. But I'm sorry, $1,000 a month, you ain't getting it to see what I could get a seat in the park for, for a couple $100, $100, whatever, depending on where I sit at. But geez, man, if they can get $1,000 at that Omni Hotel, looking at the Battery Park there, what do you think the Rays could do? What do you think that they could generate?
Well, I think that's the genius of the proposal they've made, where, from what I understand, a lot of the areas of the stadium are going to be open 7 days a week, like in terms of the concourse, and the area itself is going to benefit from that, because it's not going to be just about the baseball. It's also going to be about events and other usage that's done there and in the area, because they are open. Like, to me, that's the fallacy of the stadium things that they've done in other cities. So, for example, because I'm from Montreal, I'll use this as the go-to thing. But the Olympic Stadium had literally nothing. It looked like a closed walnut when you went around it, right? And there was no baseball. It just basically had nothing around it. Just low-rise, 2-3-story apartments, and then beyond that, if you went far enough, you might be able to find a half-decent restaurant. So you can't have it like that. And the same problem was plaguing the Rogers Center for a while in Toronto, where yes, they were close to the financial sector, but there wasn't really much built up around it. Now they're developing the waterfront. They're doing a lot of things in Toronto that's helping, boost that traffic. So there's renovations, there's new stadium ideas. I think the Rays are hitting the right thing, especially in Florida, in an environment where people like to be outdoors and kind of walking around and making it more of a busy site. And did you notice the skate park in there?
Yeah.
Oh man, the City Connect is in full glory. And to me, that's a really interesting part of it as well. The fact that the Rays are including youth, right? Because it's never an old man's game to be on a skateboard. But the fact that they're including the young generation tells me they're making this area a little bit more of a hipster kind of, fun, easygoing kind of come and hang out and watch what people can do on skateboards, have some good food, and it's just interesting overall. I think if it does come to fruition, the kinds of things and businesses that could come out of that, because it's a little bit more of a trendy area than St. Pete would otherwise have.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I know that much. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to work out. And I'll still post the names of those folks that the council members, so you can encourage them to, if you wish, to go ahead and vote yes on getting all of this done. And like I said, I'm sure there's things that still need to be negotiated. That's fine, but come on, guys. I'm tired of people asking me, so where are you going to build your own stadium at? At least hopefully I won't be saying Nashville. So, oh,
Nashville can get their own team and bid against others and win it outright, right?
there you go, brother. There you go. Oh my. Any other things we should cover here today, Matt?
There's a few promotions starting to come in the minors, and they're starting to make things pretty interesting. So Trey Morgan was moved up from A ball to A plus, and what's interesting about that is he plays first base, and so does Xavier Isaac, that's on that team. So I think there's a possibility he moves up to Double A soon. I don't know exactly when, but I imagine they want both of those guys to get some work at first base steadily. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe they're looking at Trey at another position that I haven't seen yet. But he's a really, really fun bat. He's I, a lot. Some people are comparing him to James Loney because he hasn't shown the power yet, and he does have the hit tool that James had, and some speed also to work with. So it'll be interesting to see. His first game, he was outstanding. He hit 2 doubles. And the whole roster, I think they put up 14 runs. So they kind of like the addition of Trey Morgan, let's just say. But I think you're going to see more and more and more promotions. There was another one where Patrick Wicklander ended up moving up to AAA. So you're starting to see a lot more promotions trickling in. And I think it's going to be a fun time to kind of see, because now they're getting the roster set for eventually having the draft, and the draft people coming into the FCL, and everything gets moved up because of that, right? So, but it's kind of fun. And the other thing I would say is within the next 10 days, I predict the Rays will make a trade.
Ooh.
So I'm feeling the vibes that something is going to shift, because I feel like Junior Caballero is going to come up either then or soon after then, and they're going to need to make some room. And I think they're ready to make that move as soon as they identify a willing partner and target. And I think like we're within about 10 to 12 days of that.
Who do you think it might be that we send out? Ramirez, Siri?
I really think it's Harold Ramirez, just
Yeah.
because the Rays need to build their roster to be more resilient against right-handed pitching, and right now it's missing that. They need another left-handed bat, and Harold Ramirez, I really like him. I think he can hit against both sides of the plate to a certain degree, but he lacks the power against right-handers, and the Rays really do need that. So. Unfortunately, I think it'll be him, and I think they're going to want everyday playing time for Junior Caballero when he comes up. So as soon as you do that, it really restricts the amount of at-bats you can give everybody else. There's an off chance that it could be Jose Siri as well, or instead of Harold, especially with the benchings that have happened overall. But I think his ability to cover center field and the speed that he gives him off the bench, if Johnny DeLuca does get most of the playing time, I think that keeps Jose Siri a little bit safe. But you never know. Could be either or. I would predict one of those two.
Well, it's like everything else. We get a player we like, even if the performance isn't enough to keep them, and we follow them. I know earlier today I was watching a bit of who was, I think, the Phillies and the Mets, and I see the guy up at the plate. I said, I don't even have to look too close to see who that it was. The way that fella squatted at the plate, I said, that is Joey Wendell.
Bare hand Wendell.
That's it, brother. That's it. Yes. Well, I love following our X-rays as well. But, well, I can't thank you enough, Matt, for especially bringing up everything that's going on with the promotions in the minor leagues. Folks, well, Matt says it and I say it all the time. Check out the minor league teams because there's so much action going on. We're not saying you have to be there at the Durham Bulls. You got the Biscuits. You've got them good. You got the Hot Rods. And forgive me, I forgot the other one. Who's the River Dogs, the Charleston River Dogs. Yeah, man. And all of those. So make sure you get out there and get a chance to see them because those games are as exciting as the rest as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And you get to see where guys come from and how much they grow over time. So to me, that's the most interesting part.
Hey, I want to leave you with another one too, man. I keep throwing one more ball. You keep fouling them off on me. No. Geez. I had had Making Meidlinger on the show the other day, and she's a woman who's playing with the USA women's baseball team, and she'll be going up to Thunder Bay with them and see it in July. But what's really cool about her is she's doing some work with kids like in Uganda, excuse me, and helping them with baseball. She was working with another part of her skills. She's an architect. And she told me she's building some ballparks too. I said, we need you. I said, well, she's a pitcher. I said, so tell me, are you making sure that you don't have the bullpen out in the middle of the field?
You know what? That's a very curious thing, though, because I've never even considered it. Like, who has designed ballparks to this point? Has it been a really male-dominated thing, or is there more input from women overall? Like, I don't know. And then how different would it be if it's both, right? Or has it been, if it has happened? I don't know. I don't follow stadium architecture. But I would imagine that the more perspectives you have when you're building a stadium, the better off it's going to be for everyone.
She said pitching tunnels, and I didn't ask her to expound on that. I think I'm going to have her back on just to talk about the architecture of ballparks and nothing else about baseball, because it's fascinating, but nonetheless. Yeah.
So right now, the Rays are down 2-1 to Boston. So hopefully by the time that the night finishes, the Rays are able to add runs and get the W tonight. I'm hoping they take 3 of 4 in the series. I think they can take the game tomorrow. So I'm looking at this one with very, very, very close attention.
All right. We definitely want to see Taj do well and the rest of the guys staying strong with the offense. So it's another Rays Up edition of Baseball Biz on Deck. I'm Mark Corbett, and of course, that's Mr. Matt Germain. And Matt, once again, thank you, buddy, for being here and putting some enlightenment to all the rest of us Rays fans.
Always appreciate it, Mark. Always love it.
All right. That's Mr. Matt Germain. And again, you can find Matt on Twitter at Matt, M-A-T, _Germain, Germain _. Okay. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us here today. And we look forward to talking with you again real soon. Just remember, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, Pandora, Amazon Music, and of course here, and also on baseballbizondeck.com. Please go ahead and love us, like us, like I said, and leave your reviews. Also want to leave special thanks to X Take RUX for the music rocking forward.